when you're calving a cow with a calving jack, I suppose the key thing is to stay calm yourself, work with the cow. The best time to actually jack and try and apply that leverage, you can obviously put quite a lot of leverage on the calf, but you should really be trying to work with the cow rather. So when she's forcing, that's the best time to try and get as much of the calf out as possible.
Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and this week it's the first episode in a two-part podcast. I'm joined by Teagasc vet John Donlon to get an insight into top tips relating to managing the cow before calving and calving the suckler cow. John, you're very welcome. Before we start, can you give an insight into your current role and extensive experience as a vet?
I qualified from UCD in 2018 and I worked in farm animal practice over in Wales for a year. Then I came back and worked in the vet college there in UCD and did a residency in bovine health management and a PhD in calf respiratory disease. And now I've come over to Teagasc and my area of research is beef herd health management, so kind of looking at how we can improve the health of both our suckler and dry stock animals.
That's great, John. I'm delighted to have you on today. Calving will be taking place on farms over the coming weeks, and in relation to nutrition, what are the key aspects that farmers need to be aware of at the final stages now?
The thing that would come up quite regularly is dry cow minerals. I think it's very important that, we're in the run up to calving now in the last kind of 4 to 6 weeks. We're feeding our cows a good dry cow mineral, something that has all of the major trace elements, and we need to make sure that they're getting some magnesium as well. Apart from that, that'll obviously help the cows. If the cows aren't getting a good dry cow mineral, there's a chance that they might have retained fetal membranes after the calving, and that might have knock-on effect on their fertility. It may also affect their colostrum quality as well. And in certain cases, we'll say if a cow didn't have her calcium just right, it might mean that she takes longer to calve as well. And I suppose the other thing in terms of calving difficulty is we want our cows, fit. We don't really want them over conditioned as such, because look, if they're a body condition score of 3 or 4, they're going to have a lot of fat inside in that pelvic canal, and as your calf is coming out, it'll be harder for the calf to calve, and it'll probably do more trauma to the cow herself, so she'll take longer to recover. Equally, you don't want them to be, we'll say, very thin. That's not going to be good for the cow in terms of she's going to struggle to produce enough milk to keep the calf going. So there's a real kind of fine balance there of having them just right so they calve easy and they're able to look after their calf.
That's great, John. And calving is very busy on farms, particularly managing labour can be difficult when farmers are up at night and they're busy during the day. Are there any proven techniques to help reduce calvings at night?
We do get asked about, there's a lot of talk about nighttime feeding and how does that, mean that cows are more likely to calve during the day. The scientific literature on it isn't particularly conclusive. So some work has maybe found that it's associated with more calvings during the day, but others haven't found it. And I suppose what we've done here in Grange, we've looked at the distribution of calving, and it's kind of equally distributed across the day. There's no particular peaks and troughs. I suppose in terms of nighttime feeding, if people are thinking about implementing it, the key thing to remember is you have to have adequate feed space. If you don't have enough feed space, restricting feed for cows coming into late pregnancy isn't advisable at all. These cows need to be able to eat when they want to eat. So, and especially if we're only feeding them at night, if we don't have enough feed space, there's chances that maybe some of the more timid cows might not be eating enough. So you'd want to be very careful about the implementation of nighttime feeding if you are going to try it. That'd be what I'd recommend. I would say, and from what I've looked at in the literature, I wouldn't say that it's guaranteed to make any difference either.
And I suppose the addition really is really just related to what technologies are there, particularly with cameras
Yeah.
and calving aids that farmers can make use of this time of year.
Yeah. I think cameras and maybe cow-mounted devices that'll notify you of calving are very, very useful. They're also great because I suppose one of the key things about cows, when they're calving, they like to be isolated from the group. Maybe they like to be able to know that there's cows nearby, but in general, disturbing them around calving will mean that they'll take longer to calve. So the likes of a calving camera where you can just look at the cow and she doesn't even know that she's being watched will make her a bit easier, and it'll make her more likely to calve without complications. So aids like that are great for the farmer, but they're also great for the cow and making her feel more at ease.
And I suppose a key worry among farmers is you're watching the cow maybe on the camera, and how long do you wait before you intervene, or how long is too long?
That's a very good question. If we take it back to, we'll say calving has kind of three stages. The first stage, or stage one, is can take, between 8 and 24 hours. That's when the cow is basically gearing up to calve. She's kind of her cervix is opening up, and she's getting ready to start making contractions. That's the time that you'll see the cows, her pins kind of sink, and you'll see her getting uneasy, and she'll maybe exhibit nesting behavior and things like that. That can go for a long time. And if you're not seeing anything else, then that's fine, but it's once stage two happens, and what stage two is basically the water bag coming out, or the water bag bursting, or seeing legs and a head emerge. That's when you start to really get the uterine contractions that are trying to push out the calf. And I suppose really 2 hours is if you're seeing the cow and she's taking longer than 2 hours, then definitely go down and see if she's doing okay. Less than 2 hours, the risk is that she may not actually be opened up enough. There's a lot of soft tissue in a cow's birth canal that has to be relaxed to let a calf without doing her too much damage. So going in after an hour, we'll say, if you were worried that there was twins, or if you were worried that the calf was presented with its hind legs or something, that'd be justified after an hour. But we'll say if you think that she's calving perfectly normally, I would give her 2 hours before I'd start intervening.
I suppose that's a key thing you've touched on there. When handling the cow, what are the key things that a farmer is looking for? Like, what's a normal presentation? You mentioned there the different positions of the legs, etc.
You want your head and two front legs. That's a normal presentation, and it's nearly kind of a Superman pose or something. The two front legs are coming, and then the head is kind of tucked in between them, and it's nearly like a wedge or a triangle coming up and out of the uterus, and that'll naturally kind of open up the birth canal and let the shoulders and hips, which are obviously going to be bigger, pass through. So what you're looking for in a normal presentation is those two front legs and a head. You shouldn't have three legs, we'll say, or if you have hind legs coming and you feel hocks, we'll say that's a backwards presentation, and that's not a normal presentation. And then I suppose if you're handling the cow, it's important to remember, have gloves on, have lube. You don't really want the fluid from a cow calving getting onto you, because even though we'll say brucellosis is gone now, there are other things that you might pick up from a cow calving for your own health. So better to try and keep yourself clean. But if you're putting your hand in, the main thing would be that you're able to kind of sweep your hand over the head, and you shouldn't really be able to feel a ring or a cervix. If the cow is fully dilated, it should be kind of fairly open. There shouldn't be any obvious cervix there. So you'll be able to sweep your hand over. And obviously, if the calf is very big, then that's going to be restricted. You won't be able to move your hand as easily inside her. So they'd be the first things I'd kind of look for. And then obviously, if you don't have two legs or you don't have a head, you're going to try and go in and see if you can locate those to try and correct that positioning basically.
And is there any techniques that you can advise as to how to correct that technique or position of the
Oh
calf?
yeah, we'll say a leg down or something like that. What you're going to want, obviously, the most important thing with this is to be gentle, because all of the tissue inside in the uterus and the birth canal is very, very soft, and it is very easy to do a good bit of damage to a cow if you're not gentle when you're trying to do this. So work with the cow. If she's trying to force, don't be fighting her. Wait till she takes a time to rest. If you're really struggling with it, then obviously call your vet, because I would find myself anyway, when I have calved cows previously, there's often extra things you might need to give the cow to make her or to stop her from forcing so that you can get her repositioned. But we'll say if you can get your hand in and you can get the palm of your hand around the foot rather than just trying to pull at the leg and kind of nearly bunch up the leg so that you're kind of flexing it complete or pulling it in completely before pulling it up so that it's as small as possible. And then as you get it straight, you kind of straighten it out. But the main thing would be to try and have your hand around that foot the whole time so that you're not going to accidentally, do damage to the cow with the foot. And then with the head, that can be more difficult, to be honest with you. A head back, depending on how far back it is, it can be quite hard to get to. You probably need quite long arms, and sometimes it's a case of just trying to grab whatever you can get a hold of. But in those cases, that'd be times when, if you're really struggling with that, that's when you would call a vet. And, I probably wouldn't leave it too long to call the vet. If you put your hand in and you're not able to reach, I wouldn't be wasting too much time in making a decision, because the sooner that you make that decision, the sooner you have the calf out, the better the likelihood that you'll have a strong kind of vigorous calf. With looking for the head, you can obviously try and get your head, fingers into the calf's ears or something like that to try and bring it up and around. But that is quite a challenge often. So sometimes when a vet comes out, they'll use drugs like clenbuterol to relax the uterus to stop the cow from straining. So, a vet has that, but a farmer won't have that at their disposal. So that's when you would call a vet.
Most definitely, John, it's really about making the call at the right time. For
Yeah.
farmers that are using a calving jack, what are the key things that they should be aware of and techniques?
The calving jack is a very impressive piece of equipment, because through the law of the lever, you're able to put a lot of force on a calf that, with only your two hands, you wouldn't be able to do. So I suppose the first thing to make sure is make sure you have all the pieces before you start the calving season at all. I've often gotten called to calvings because when somebody does realize they need to calve a cow, they realize that they're missing part of the jack, maybe the head, we'll say, or something like that. So at the start of the calving season, make sure that you have everything. And then I suppose the key things with the jack are, first of all, putting your ropes on the calf's legs, so above the fetlock, not down around the foot or anything like that. And a lot of people will try and do kind of one loop, and then they'll try and thread the rope around the leg and kind of a second loop to get as much kind of distribution of force across the legs as possible. And then one click at a time. Don't be going too fast at this at all. This is when you're calving a cow with a calving jack. I suppose the key thing is to stay calm yourself, work with the cow. The best time to actually jack and try and apply that leverage, because if we're using a moor park head, which would be the normal head you'd have here in on the head of a jack in Ireland, you can obviously put quite a lot of leverage on the calf. But you should really be trying to work with the cow rather. So when she's forcing, that's the best time to try and get as much of the calf out as possible. Um, and I suppose just taking your time as well. Don't uh, go too fast with it, because you're if you are calving the cow, the chances are that that soft tissue I'm talking about, it's still not fully stretched out. So applying lots of lube, so have a good supply of lube on the farm as well. Get a good amount of it on your gloved hand. Get it in around those pinch points, around the shoulders and the head in particular, to try and ease that calf through the birth canal as much as possible, and then jack away. But as I say, I'd always say one click at a time. Don't be really trying to ratchet it all in one go. Take it nice and handy. Make sure that you know where you are in terms of the jack, because it's a very long instrument. If a cow is gets loose inside in a pen or something, or if you're between a jack and a wall, that jack can injure you quite significantly as well if you're not careful. So be aware of that, and just take your time and make sure that everything is coming nicely. Once you start jacking, the difference between the 5 minutes that it might take to do it when you're taking your time and the 2 minutes that you might take if you're really going at it, it'll make a big difference to how traumatized the cow is, or how sore she is afterwards. And it'll often not make a massive difference to how vigorous the calf is. So that'd probably be my main thing with the jack, is just don't get overexcited, keep calm, and just take your time.
That's great, John. I suppose really the injury is a key thing at this time of year, particularly around calving, maybe large calves, calving the cow. As you said, the cow could be a bit excited, etc. What are the key things from a safety point of view, particularly on farms?
So having a good calving gait is going to make everybody's life a lot safer. Getting your cow into your calving gait, that will help. It will make life a lot easier. Because if you're trying to calve, you shouldn't really be trying to calve cows inside in crushes or chutes or anything like that. Because if she goes down, it'll be very difficult to get her out, and there's a chance that she might crush, yourself or something. So calving gates are great, because as long as you have that calving gate set up so that you can open it out, and most cows will go down at some stage during the calving, making sure that there is no chance that somebody's going to get stuck underneath the cow. It would be a major thing. And then we'll say if you're lifting the calf or something after the calving to try and get fluid out of the calf's lungs, mind your back as well. So some people will use things like they'll put the calving ropes on the back legs of the calf, and then kind of use the jack to lift the calf up, so that the calf can kind of be hung upside down. You don't need to hold the calf upside down for particularly long. Some people would say it'll only take 5 seconds for whatever fluid is going to come out of its lungs to come out. So, ta hold the calf up, give it, slap its chest for a couple of seconds, and then let it back down. Don't be trying to hold it up for a very long time, because that'll injure your back. And I suppose watch the cow as well. Cows around calving time, they're very unpredictable. So make sure that you have an easy way to make a quick exit out of the calving pen, because there are many instances where we'll say people have been injured by cows just after calving. So being able to get out very quickly is very important. And then I suppose from the cow's point of view as well, if you have her in a head gate, making sure that if she does go down, she's not going to get her windpipe compromised, because obviously if they go down in a head gate, there's a chance that they might start choking themselves. So make sure that you can either open the head gate very easily, or there's no kind of bar at the bottom that's going to compromise her windpipe would be another big consideration.
Most definitely, John, some great advice there. For farmers now that are putting preparations in place, what are essentials that they have to have ready if they need them?
Having a calving jack on the farm is obviously very, very important, and making sure that it's fully functional. You're going to want your calving ropes, and nice clean calving ropes as well. So the nice kind of thicker ropes are probably the better ones to use for calving cows, because they'll distribute the pressure from the calving jack a little bit better. Plenty of lube. Lube is your friend when it comes to all of these things. You can never have too much of it. Good, robust, long gloves, so that you can handle the animal and you don't have to worry about bursting out through the gloves. Would be the other thing. And then personally, I always appreciate it if there's a clean bucket on the farm. So a clean bucket and warm water are great things to have, because we'll say, even for yourself, if you're just calving a cow, if you can put the calving ropes into a clean bucket of warm water, they'll loosen up a little bit. They'll be more pliable. They'll be easier to apply. And you can give them a good rinse afterwards as well, so that you're keeping your ropes as clean as possible. And then in the unfortunate circumstance where you do have to call a vet, if you have clean buckets, it's much nicer for if you need to do a cesarean or something, the vet will need to give the cow's abdomen a very good scrub before they do the surgery. So clean buckets, you're going to have a better chance of really getting her nice and clean before you do the surgery. And then I suppose, like, your other things for your calves, but we can get onto that later. Your stomach tubes and naval disinfectants, and bottles for feeding calves are probably the other main things. But good calving ropes and a good amount of lube are definitely two things that everybody needs.
That's great, John. That's all we have time for this week. Thanks very much. Some very timely tips there. And next week, John will be discussing caring for the newborn calf. Thanks very much, John.
Thank you.
You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.